We Prayed to the Wrong God by I. Finch. I present these journals to you as a warning. There are churches that are indistinguishable from your Christian churches. Well, until you get to the inner circle. They pray to neither Yahweh nor Jesus, even though they say they do. They pray to someone whose name I can never write, a God who loves to make himself known, but because of forces even beyond him, it is quite difficult for him to do so. A God who can give those he loves whatever he wants, but only those he loves. This isn't a conspiracy of how many elites secretly serve him, or how he sits in the background dictating every move. This is an account of how he's ruined my life. Forgive my arrogance in the following journal entries, pride before the fall and all that. Welcome, losers. Today's a big day for me and you. For you, this is the start of how you get everything you want in life by reading my memoirs. And for me, this is the day I start my first and hopefully last romantic relationship with a certain beautiful girl named Kay Mackenzie. I won't go into too much detail about her, because I'm sure you've heard of her, because I'm sure, by the time you read this, that I'll be famous, and so will she. She'll be married to me. Duh. Here's the most important thing you need to know about the universe. This will change your life and make my memoirs sell out. Read this slowly. Come close. I'll whisper this to you. The first commandment is the most overlooked. You still have no gods before me. It implies there are other gods, and oh boy, does he love proving he's real. I'm not a fan of him, for reasons you'll learn later. But you might be. There are two ways we know with 100% certainty that he's real. So, this one's more of a party trick. If you try to say our God's name on camera, something will happen, and his name is never heard. This can be as simple as the camera losing audio for 1 second, or a deer wailing like it's being stabbed in the background to cover up the sound. I've heard both. If we try to write it, we get similar effects. Laptops shut down, ink spills, or the pencil lead splits and leaps right into the eye of the writer. I've seen it all. Now, here's what he does that's beyond a party trick. He's what I, to the anger of my friends, call a coupon-honoring God. That means if you believe Yahweh or whoever did a miracle, any miracle, and go into one of my God's temples and tell him you have faith that Yahweh did it, and state that you have faith in him that he can do the same, he'll do it just like that. You can be healed from cancer, legs growing back, and people being raised from the dead. Seen it all. Where are these churches, you ask? Everywhere, really. And you wouldn't spot the difference on the outside or inside on an average Sunday service. Only once you reach the inner circle is the true nature of the church revealed to you. There are some mega churches, mid-sized churches, and struggling small churches. The small churches believe they are small because they teach the true word, and thus attract fewer people, and they disdain the bigger churches. The big churches don't think about the small churches until the big churches need to give them money because they're dying. I know many of you are asking, why would a church ever be poor if you could simply ask God for whatever you want? Well, we'll get to that later. I'll give you a list of churches in the back of this book, and you can either attend them and ask God for whatever, or start a new holy war. It's not my problem. I don't care either way, as long as you paid for this book, which pays for my retirement. Now, let me tell you about my God and my girl, because they're intertwined in this religion of mine. When I was 13, about 4 years ago, we had a special ceremony with our youth group. All of our youth group were driven by van to one of the temples. The churches are easy to find, but the temples, where the real power is, they're hard to find. This one was out in a cornfield, isolated and alone. It was not a grand thing, and it was closer in appearance to a shack in the woods than a grand cathedral. We exited the bus to go to the temple in a silent single-file line. Talking without permission was an offense that resulted in physical punishment. We shivered in the rough wind and the cold drizzle of rain. Most of us kept our heads down to avoid the gaze of the high corn stalks. Silence was demanded, but fear was allowed, so our single file scurried and shook all the way to the temple. Be seated, Sharon, our youth group leader, told us and went away to who knows where. We did as we were commanded. She did not tell us to be silent, but we understood. The wind beat on the tinted windows as if it was demanding to come in. It shook the whole poorly made temple. The red carpet that lined the auditorium danced in front of my eyes. If we looked at it too long, we would swear that it was not solid, but a thick liquid, too thick for blood. The wooden pews groaned at any movement we would dare make. Many a kid has been beaten because their bench groaned too loud. So we sat in corpse-like silence, in forced stillness that made my heart race around my chest until Sharon finally returned. Sharon came from the back of the sanctuary and held the hand of some kid a couple years younger than us, maybe 9. I did not like Sharon. Everything about her screamed fake and uptight. Her static platinum hair and pink nails were too fake. Her clothes were tight, and even as a child, I wondered why she dressed like that to teach youth group. I've seen the average youth group leader you guys have for church, and no, she did not look like that. I'm not sure why she wanted to be a youth group leader. I don't even think she liked kids. Oh well, maybe that's why. You'll see what I mean. Anyway, Sharon escorted the small child between the 2 pews where we sat. As she walked in, the benches quieted their groans, and the wind eased its assault against the door to a more polite and creepy knock. "Today, we get to feed God," Sharon said, and smiled with a perky demeanor foreign to her. We all shifted in our seats and tried not to appear afraid. We forgot food. How could we feed our God without food? We forgot to bring food, and this would make God mad, our parents mad, and Sharon mad. Most of us weren't stupid, so we knew not to admit our flaws. Instead, we spoke to each other in hand signals and concerned looks to determine if anyone brought food we could split. No one was stupid enough to admit we forgot to bring food, except this one girl in the front row who audibly yelped. We all turned to her. "Miss Sharon," the girl said. "I'm sorry. I mean, Miss..." The girl corrected mid-stutter. She was shivering, maybe out of nerves, maybe out of fear. Maybe she was still recovering from the elements outside. Miss Sharon's smile was as hard as stone. She hated being reminded she was unmarried. Honestly, I think the girl was too oblivious to realize it. She went on stammering all the way through. Her hands moved up and down as she spoke, like the most frazzled symphony conductor ever. "I'm sorry. I forgot to bring food. I'll do better next time. I always write stuff like this in my planner, and I must have forgotten this time. I don't normally do this. You know I'm a good student." "Miss Mackenzie," Sharon said, stone smile unbent. "I didn't tell you to bring food because I have it." A great fire leapt from the altar at the end of the hall. The altar of our God stood about 9 feet tall. He had the head of a bull, the sculpted arms of an Olympian, and a furnace that served as a stomach, and that furnace roared now. We all sat in our seats, and our eyes avoided the fire. You've probably never been in the presence of real supernatural power. You feel the need to hide from it, and are haunted by an evil insignificance. Maybe you felt insignificant looking at the stars. It dawns on you that you are small compared to the universe. But I bet you embraced that. I bet it made you want to see all there was in life. I bet you took risks. I bet you traveled. Well, I call this evil insignificance because it does the opposite. This power made me want to end life's search. There was too much power, too many things that were beyond me. I wanted to stay in this seat hidden and scared and never have to face the uncertainty of life again. My heart fled, my head danced, and my mouth went dry. We were supposed to be silent, but I heard myself panting. Sharon did not mind it. She walked forward. Her heels did not clack against the carpet, but instead they made a splooshing sound as if she was walking on a puddle. She dragged that kid behind her. Oh, no, 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 I thought, but didn't dare say. The kid was the food. I know the kid was drugged. He had to be. Anyone with any survival instinct would have ran from her. She strode forward with confidence. Perhaps this is why she wanted to work with kids. Perhaps this was her reward. She got to feel all of our God's presence and not want to shrivel away like we wanted to. All I could think was no, 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 the closer they got. I didn't want to watch this, but I didn't want to be next. So I had to sit there, and I was supposed to keep my eyes open, but I couldn't manage that. I'm sorry I'm a coward, but I covered my eyes. It didn't feel right to see. That wasn't enough, though. My eyes couldn't close tight enough. Bright orange light crept in them. I squeezed with every muscle in my body and they couldn't go tighter. Pain swarmed in the middle of my head because of the effort. Then came his screams once he was in the fire. He was so confused. I heard a what in there, and so many cries for help. I opened my eyes to see if she would. She kicked him with her heel. He was pushed back into the flames. And she laughed. They all laughed. I felt sick because I didn't know it was funny. I didn't know the kid, which meant he wasn't part of the inner circle of the church. So we were told not to care about him or his safety. That hurt me. And for the past few months, I was having physical aches of pain at what I witnessed and we did to unbelievers. It created a deep numbness within me for all things except me. How could I love my God or my people who would do such a thing? The other kids did not feel this way. I can't blame them, I guess. It worked out for them. They laughed and made fun of how he wiggled in the flames. They marveled at how you could see a skeleton. They mocked how loud he got and they mocked his eventual silence. And then the flames went out and there was quiet. Except for one person's sniffles. Sniffles that soon grew into tears. Something that was frowned upon. Why should we pity something that was our God's will? The nervous girl from the front cried. She viciously wiped away tears from her face because she knew her tears were heinous, her empathy evil. She understood her own punishment would be coming. The kids stared at her. That's what I hated the most. They didn't have the shame to turn away from her, no. They stared because they genuinely could not understand why she was crying, or they had the sick desire to enjoy her upcoming punishment. The girl could have saved herself from this punishment. She maybe could have avoided it if she pretended that her tears were about anything else. But she kept saying, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean. It's just that they were so young." As Sharon walked now, the world felt the weight of her steps, and I felt it again. Again, I had to be a hopeless spectator to an ugly stomach-churning spectacle. Sharon's heels clacked against the ground, resolute to deliver a punishment. That girl was Kay Mackenzie, and that's the moment I knew I loved her. I grew numb because of this world we lived in, but she didn't. I fell in love with the girl because she cared even when she wasn't supposed to. Sharon delivered her punishment with malice, a swift smack to the face. You all hide your punishments on parts of the body that could be hidden. Our leaders would punish us on our faces so we could be shamed. Sharon's mission was not to stop until Kay's face was swollen and purple and Kay's tears ceased. Now, I'd never done this, and I don't think I could do it again, but I made myself cry to get Sharon's attention off Kay. A loud wail, so Sharon had to click-clack her heels to me, smack me once, and then go back to Kay and keep going, which to me is funny in a way. If you don't laugh, you cry, right? Eventually, Sharon grew too tired, and none of our faces became purple, just red. Every strike from Sharon was worth it because Kay and I became friends after. She's a small girl, and her 2 front teeth are big, like mine. She talks too much, in the opinion of everyone but me. And they say the same about me. And she gets depressed sometimes, but won't tell anybody because, like me, that's not her role in life. We're here to make people laugh, and we would never burden anyone else with what makes us sad. And like me, she has a hard time expressing herself to people she's not close to, which is the saddest of tragedies for them. And my life-saving grace, because if she did, they'd be hopelessly in love with her, just like I am. This is the wonderful heart of Kay Mackenzie, the girl I will start dating tomorrow, and then marry within the year. That's her, the girl I'd go to hell for. We will leave this God together, and I'll give her a life of peace where her empathy won't be punished. After that night, Kay and I did become friends. Best friends, even. However, the death of the child gave us two different goals. Kay believed the child had to die because we angered God. The death of the child inspired her to attempt the Sisyphean task of pleasing this mad God. It hurt her over the years. Her hair grew small strips of gray. Her eyes had crow's feet before she was 18. She always smiled, lighting the room. But if she was a candle's flame, she was one gust away from disappearing forever. It hurt to watch. The death of the child erased my trust in our God. I wanted nothing to do with him. But I couldn't break free physically, so I broke free virtually. I bypassed the parental block on my phone, and the whole wide world was at my fingertips via the internet. That's where I learned about you people, dear reader, and what the outside world believes. I want to say this brought a great sense of enlightenment to me, but it made me depressed, anxious, to be honest, self-centered. I spent a lot of time on Twitter. I amassed more knowledge than anyone else in my group. Even the adults blocked about 99% of the internet on their phones, but none of this knowledge made me happy or a better person. I became a fraud, a wise, self-centered deviant who explored all corners of the internet at night and pretended to worship this strange god in the morning. I believed I was getting away with this as well until it was time for discipline. At our tiny private school, occasionally, the secretary would come in and announce she needs students for discipline. That meant students had done something wrong, and now they needed to be punished for it. Anything was allowed for punishment. Discipline comes at random. How could you know you did something wrong with rules such as talking without permission, or being too loud at lunch? How could you ever know if you were safe? Do you think the teachers stopped taking notes once class was over? No. If they saw you commit any disciplinable action at church, or even in your neighborhood, you could be sure it was reported. Before discipline, it was another lazy day in American history class. Our teacher sat on the far right and watched clips of his beloved Dallas Cowboys. We left our books open, notebooks on our desks, and pencil in our hands as we talked to one another, in case Mr. Foyer told us to quiet down and actually do work. Chatter and mischief filled the room. Students bounced from desk to desk, gossiping and scheming. Who did what to who and where? Guys untucked their uniform shirts, girls pretended to be annoyed with guys' flirtations. I freely scrolled through my phone. This was our playground. Understand, Mr. Foyer was a terrible teacher, but his lack of interest in teaching gave us freedom. So much of our lives were monitored. But not there, though. Miss Dana stepped into the room. Without a word spoken, we sat in our seats. I felt smaller. The room felt tighter. I could not read my classmates' minds, but I knew what they were thinking. They were thinking the same thing as me. Was it my turn to be called? I could feel our previous sins in the air. They came down on us like an itchy antique blanket. Every action we had done previously was questioned. Why were we up without permission? Why were we talking without permission? What did she see? Was it my turn to be called? Miss Dana was a pretty woman, and so sweet, so much of the time. She was also the woman who announced who would be disciplined today. She exhibited professionalism and grace, unlike so many of our authority figures. Great smile, beautiful brown skin, and a reassuring voice. Until it wasn't. When she was not asking us to rise to be tortured, everything she said almost always ended in a laugh. This was the woman who helped us find our way on the first day of class, who would compliment any fashion decision we made that still followed our strict dress code. I know she was a shoulder to cry on for Kay. Mr. Foyer rose from his seat. "All right, class, I told you all to settle down." Of course he hadn't told us to settle down earlier, but like many of the adults, Mr. Foyer was a coward and refused to look like he was doing anything wrong. I read people's comments to cult leaders. How could an adult be part of hurting a child? If you asked Miss Dana, I think she'd say, you turn the switch in your head that thinks, off. You follow a script. We all saw her do that with astonishing results. "I need to call a couple students in for discipline," she said in a dry authoritarian baritone in front of the whiteboard at the head of the classroom. An American flag hung on the left corner, and a Christian flag on the right. Miss Dana scanned the classroom. Her gaze was not still and patient like normal. Her eyes wandered and were expectant. Maybe this wasn't the part that she turned off, but it was the part that was finally free. Did she enjoy that? I always felt like she would say my name. I always felt guilty. I still do. There's always another sin, isn't there? I went over mine in my head and wondered if a teacher was there observing me when I thought I was alone. Tony? Jake? She didn't bother with last names. We knew who everybody was. Small school. It was always the same kids, and I was clever enough to hide my flaws. My name was seldom chosen. Jez? Cannon? It was almost over. I never got called, so I shouldn't get called this time. Assyria? Reflexively, I found myself thanking God again, under my lungs for keeping me safe. Sath? I didn't move. It felt too real and too cruel. I grabbed my desk and looked straight ahead at the whiteboard at the front of the class. It blurred and became hard to read. Random facts about American presidents were on there and all smudged together in my view. My heart was running, speeding. Of course, I didn't look at any of the other students. There was too much shame in having my name called. Come on, let's go, Miss Dana said, and melted into her role as the villain. There was no bend in her voice. How could she be so resolute considering what they could do to us? And that was her faith, I suppose. Sath, get up, she commanded me now. Each child was in line. I was the only one still seated. Go on up now, Sath. Take your medicine, said our teacher, Mr. Foyer. He's still in the cult to this day. Most teachers leave and come back, or die shortly after leaving. Not Mr. Foyer. He's a short, pathetic man who went along with this cult because he'd go along with anything that patted his ego. I rose from my seat and followed. We were like a funeral procession, or ghost children who could not acknowledge one another. We walked in the empty halls past our lockers into the main office and spread out around it. We circled a singular chair, the one piece of furniture in the office, and cringed around it waiting for the principal to come to deliver our punishment and state our crimes. Most of us visibly cowered. My chest pulsed. The girl beside me cried quietly, and the boy beside me kept saying, "Fuck, fuck." It's odd. I don't feel comfortable saying their names now. I would never tell you who cried before they were punished, or who said one of the bad words. There was a certain code we all lived by. What happened in discipline stayed in discipline. The waiting was not the worst part. And yet, I felt we were waiting for a long time, and the fear in me was subsiding. Could I really be that lucky that discipline was canceled today? Miss Dana pretended to busy herself around the desk. She held a folder of whatever our crimes were and smacked it down against the desk. "Where is Principal Frederick?" she asked the air. She then turned to us, and that glimmer came back in her eye. Maybe he's giving everybody mercy today. And I could see she wanted that. She didn't want to see us hurt. I'll never forget how her smile stretched from cheek to cheek, because it contorted right after. "Oh, Principal Frederick," she said, and the sternness returned. Then came the fear. I never knew someone could stand so still. Principal Frederick appeared at the end of the office, seemingly out of nowhere. His eyes were closed, shut tight. They reminded me of the effort an honest kid puts into closing his eyes while playing hide-and-go-seek. His black suit and tie were soaked, I assumed with sweat because that's what his face was covered in. "Principal Frederick," Miss Dana said as we scattered, not bold enough to leave the room, but bold enough to squish ourselves into the corner of the small office. Something was not right. This was not normal discipline. "How did you get here? There's only one door." Miss Dana looked behind her as if that would confirm this magic. "Yes," Principal Frederick confirmed, and then touched his chest and moved his fingers across his wet, white shirt until he found his tie and adjusted it. "Yes, normally, I have," he sputtered, and tears ran down his face. Principal Frederick." That's all Miss Dana could do. Repeat his name dumbly. "I looked through a door that I was not invited to go in. He cried without remorse, with a freedom that I've never seen a man cry with, like a newborn baby's. He stepped forward, and behind him I saw the impossible, a gray wooden door that had not been there before. Principal Frederick strode forward. Tears flowed down his face and made his cheeks glisten. Snot poured from his nose into his mouth, which polluted every word he said. "I've been told Seth must go through the door." He opened his eyes, and his 2 eyeballs dropped out of their sockets. They plopped down. They thudded like rocks. Eyes do not thud like rocks, nor could they just fall out of a face. One rolled forward and the other rolled backwards. One crashed into the door and sounded like a marble hitting solid oak. The pupil faced us. Faced me. Everyone in the room screamed. We were brainwashed in our cult to witness so much of the unordinary, bizarre, and evil. But this was out of the ordinary. We froze. I think someone pissed themselves beside me. Every kid cried freely. I apologize, the principal said. "I saw something I should not have seen, so I was given another pair of eyes. Where's Seth? Where is he?" the principal asked as he dropped to his knees. No one answered. Thank everything no one answered. On his knees, he slid forward and groped and sniffed, grabbing the first kid he felt and pulling them close to his nose. "Where is he? I can smell him," he said. "Seth, go in the door," Miss Dana asked. She still had kindness in her. It was a request. I shook my head at her, a desperate and pleading no. The other one of Principal Frederick's eyes stopped rolling and landed at my feet. It was not an eye. It was more like a rock, expertly painted to imitate an eye. "Seth, go first, please," Miss Dana said. Principal Frederick pulled at another student and gave them a sniff and disregarded them against the wall. Again, I shook my head no, and that set her off. "Get off the wall and go in!" she screeched, a demonic, eardrum-popping, vocal cord-violating screech. Maybe she was as scared as I was then, and her scream to me was a plea of someone who was trying to save her own life. I do know one thing, though. She followed her faith. She believed with 100% certainty that she was doing the right thing when she rushed to me, clapped her hands, and screamed, "He's here, Principal Frederick! He's here!" she yelled. Principal Frederick leapt on me. His knee slammed into his own eye on the floor. Crack! It exploded with more vigor than a bug under a foot. It burst open on my legs and feet. "The door, Miss Dana, the door!" he bellowed, and Miss Dana ran for it, opened the door and closed her eyes. She refused to look where she damned me to go. I clawed for anyone. The other kids deserted. Their screams echoed off the halls. Principal Frederick squeezed me tighter, his wet arms constricted against my throat. I wanted to rebel against all I was ever told then. I wanted to kick an adult, bite an adult. I wanted to free myself, but I couldn't. Maybe it was my home training. I just couldn't. I don't know how Principal Frederick felt during the ordeal, and for some reason that concerned me. He was crying when he picked me up, and he kept crying. The last thing I saw before Principal Frederick tossed me inside was Miss Dana stepping on his other eye. Crack. Smoke scraped my taste buds, buried me in its grasp, and mystified the world around me. And there was a beautiful orange light in the distance I couldn't resist going to. Walking was out of the question. I dry-heaved and crawled forward. I was not alone. To my left and right, I heard footsteps and jingles like keys. I was going in the same direction as them. I made myself small and tried to remain quiet and go to the light. I needed that glow. My heart races in anticipation right now just writing about that light. We aren't so different from mosquitoes, you and I. There's a certain type of light we're drawn to. We must see even if it kills us. I still try to recreate that light. I've tried everything I can. Don't judge me. You don't know what it's like to have your soul, mind, and body all want something at one time. And don't talk to me about love, because that light is stronger than love. This light is in your genes. I did finally reach a destination of sorts. I saw someone, still maybe miles away from the great orange lights, had a familiar face. Sharon. Sharon sat straight ahead. I say she sat, but it appeared like she was sitting on nothing. I didn't speak, didn't move. I was at her mercy. The adrenaline left my body. Deep insignificance possessed me. I was looking at something better than me, something beyond me. I respected no god at the time, and I stayed down and bowed to this. Again, it was like observing the stars. No, it was worse than that. This was like being tossed in space, floating powerless and unable to die, and I was being pulled toward a giant celestial body, a knowing that you should not be there, and a sense that you cannot leave. "Miss Sharon?" I asked. "Something like that." I didn't know how to respond, so she spoke again. "You'll never believe who I was having a lovely conversation with." I don't know." "Oh, Gas, come on. It's the answer that's never wrong." I said the name of our god. "Yes," she practically moaned out. "And he told me all about you and what you've been doing." She tilted her head at me, like she wanted me to speak, as if she wanted me to confess something. I'm sorry," I said. "But he didn't have to, you know, because we can smell it on you. We can smell your sin." Right then, a putrid smell leaked from my skin. It's hard to describe, really unique. Not the typical smell of garbage or a skunk, but the stench of week old death, maybe. It poured from my skin and rose in the air. I remember how angry it made me at myself. I scratched myself and begged for it to stop. I dropped to the black ground and rolled like the smell could leave me, but I could see it coming from my pores. It was an ugly green that zigzagged in the air, and it was thick like toothpaste. "We all know what you are," she said and rose. Her heels clacked as she walked towards me. "Our Lord wants you to know we can smell you. Everyone can, even if they wouldn't tell you." "Why am I here?" I asked. Sharon snapped her fingers. A great wind ran through the room and cleared the smoke. To my left and right were lines of beings shackled together. Some were people, but not all of them. They were humans of all hues. Hues that don't exist on this planet. Bovine people who walked on 2 legs, and 4-legged things with bodies and feet of cows and the faces of people just like you and me. I was confused and horrified. I witnessed what, to my eyes, were abominations and impossible mistakes of nature tied to normal people. And forgive me, but I know now that those things had souls and thoughts of their own. But they were hideous, frightening monsters. I let out a stream of curses as soon as I saw them, and the chains. They were slaves. Hands chained, their legs chained, wrists chained to the person ahead of them. "Why am I here?" Sharon smacked her hands together. A chorus of cries rang out. I heard the begging and burning of the victims of the giant flame. I heard the moans for freedom. They spoke in different languages, and I was cursed to understand them. 1 year. I only had 1 year alive. Another bargained to nothing. "Please, please, I thought I deserved this, but I don't. Please, please." Another said, "Save my children. Go back and tell my children, a father begged. Sharon nodded her head, the smoke returned, and the moans were silenced. Across the universe, Sharon said, this is the way things are. You live and you die to feed him. Look how you crawled to it. Look how you were drawn to it. This is the way of the world. This is how you and everyone you love ends up. Why did you show me that? Because you belong to him. Your parents prayed and dedicated you to him, and our God wants no lost sheep. Just like the other guy. She winks. You obey him right from here on? Yes, yes, yes. Good. Now get in line. No, please. No, let me go back. I'll serve him, I swear. He doesn't want that anymore. You're far too gone. Corrupt. Get up and get in line. No, no, no. I screamed, shut my eyes, and braced to be grabbed. I would fight. I would do it this time. I could fight. But the grab never came. Sharon stood over me unamused. Is that your final decision? She asked. Yes? Then go. Every god must honor free will after all. But when you desire this, it will not come to you easily then. You are cursed and don't know it. You will be hated for all the days of your life. You will be rejected by all and be denied every good thing you see before you. Others will have it and you can never taste it because we smell you. We smell what's wrong with you. We know you are wrong. I didn't raise my head. I buried it deeper into the floor. I heard the sound of her heels walking away from me and into the darkness. You may go now. And I did. I ran back to where I came from, anxious to escape, anxious to be away from everybody because she did it. She confirmed a fear of mine for so long. I was an awful person. I dared explore outside the realm of our God, and I believed that was so wrong then. It was always in the back of my head that everyone knows. Everyone knows that I'm wrong, and that's how my life would go. For some reason or another, the idea of anyone getting close to me repulsed everyone in my school or church. I was branded creepy, or a lot to deal with, or just something off about him. People never felt the need to whisper when ridiculing me. My parents spent as little time as they could with me. I was rejected in every attempt to form a romantic relationship. I had to beg to get into any groups for a group project, and I was mocked for nearly every action I took. I considered suicide often. Throughout it, though, I had one friend. The same girl I told you about before. Kay Mackenzie. I love her very much, and promised to take her out of here. So after much research online via YouTube Shorts and TikTok, I know how I'll make my fortune. I'll move out and start my career as soon as I can. I will be following the dropshipper to influencer pipeline. I'll start as a dropshipper to make as much money as I can, and then once I have enough, or enough to appear like I'm rich, I'll start a TikTok shaming people for being poor and then charging to teach them the never-before-seen tips to dropship. I've seen enough of the content you guys make. I know it'll work. And the good part of it for me is that I don't even have to make the money dropshipping. I'll start Walter Whiting if I have to and say I got it from dropshipping. Once I'm rich, I'll charge everyone and their mother to learn my secret. Don't take it personally. Like I said, I've got to get enough money to get Kay and me out of this cult, so I'm gonna buy us a big house in the mountains. You can hate me for it. I get it. After all, if you're buying my memoir, you might have bought one of the classes I sold. Sorry. Honestly, though, if you had a friend like Kay, you might do the same thing. I don't know if anyone else gets this or got this, but do you ever feel protective of your friends when you know you're about to leave them? You know it'll be over soon and this is as good as it gets. I always wished for the I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but here feeling, and I get it when I'm with Kay. And as you know, I do not deserve it because she's a way better person than me. I don't have faith like she does, and my goals will never be as pure. Yet I am loved anyway. And that's her mistake. She's too trusting and too kind. Trusting is the cousin to gullible, and gullible is married to used, abused, and thrown away like garbage. She'll have to go experience the real world eventually, where people will tear her apart simply because it's funny. So after I take the best girl I know on a few dates, I'll ask her to marry me. We'll leave this little church. The next entry you read from me will be me reporting on the best day of my life. When I knocked on Kay's door, I wasn't greeted by Kay or her parents. I was greeted by Sharon. I was told she would be escorting me to Kay and that our God was making a special appearance on Earth in one of the temples he owns. We hopped in her car and rode in silence for 30 minutes. Sharon stopped the car and I shifted in my seat behind her in the back, nervous and scared of my potential fate. We were at the top of a hill that overlooked a valley filled with trees. That was where our God was. That was where my girlfriend would be. Sharon, can you bring me closer? No. She droned in feigned boredom, but I heard the joy in her voice at my pleading. I think I'll just stop here and you can figure it out for yourself. A calmness came on me. A type of calm that could only arrive through an unadulterated revolutionary choice. Muted and methodic, I began to slip the belt from my pants. Sharon? I spoke her name again. I was surprised at myself and the lack of anger I felt. What? She bit back like me calling her name was another sin. Can you look at me please, Sharon? She glared at me for a second via the rearview mirror. I'm not sure what she saw when she saw me, but I know she's afraid of it. She gave me an uncharacteristically skittish glance and then looked ahead. You hurt us so much as children. Do you understand that? You hurt yourselves. No, Sharon. You don't understand. This church, the school, is a prison for us. There are things you've done to us that we aren't healing from. Will it ever end, Sharon? Sharon, can you please look at me? This is important. No. She shut the door on both questions. Sharon, you're not a good person. You are hurting people. It felt foolish. So dumb and lame trying to reason with her. Why should Sharon ever care about right and wrong? Sharon raised her eyes to the mirror and looked at me. She had so much makeup on. It looked like an extra layer of flesh on her face. And it still does not cover the ugly black mole. Her dark red lips opened to sigh with the relief of a criminal finally caught. It felt like God's foot was on my neck, she said and sighed again. And everything I've done after that is to avoid feeling that helpless ever again. It is what it is. And with that confession, I wrapped my belt around her neck, and I pulled her against the seat. She choked and gasped for air. She was evil. I want you to know that. I did not enjoy watching her struggle. She scratched at my belt. Her nails ripped crooked lines in it until they chipped and chattered and made a crick, crick, crick sound as they fell to the floor. She begged for air.
Don't know it was you. They're going to kill you.
No, they won't, I cried as I said it. This isn't a fun thing to take a life. The cult will never see me again. I'm going to get my girlfriend. I'm going to kill your god. Was all she could say. Now she found my eyes in the mirror. Now we saw each other. Her makeup ran off her face and she looked clownish. My grip loosened and I strained to make myself finish the job, but it was hard to summon the strength to do it because I understood what she was. She was a hostage with a mask on. A mask of makeup, malevolent authority, and bitter discipline. In our cult, our god's name is spread generationally in families. To have a child is to have value. Sharon's one goal in life, like all women in my cult's goal in life, was to get married. She was 40 and unwed. I know that hurt her. I know she felt she had no value, and feared our people and our God would look at her with shame and wrath. So she had to go beyond being a mere apostle. She had to be the most loyal servant, and that's what made her a monster. I loosened my grip. It's hard to hate someone when you start seeing their whole story. That gave Sharon a chance to speak.
Seth, please. I don't want to die. I want to be a mother first.
Her last word were gargled cries about motherhood. It took more than one try to lift her dead body. I hopped in the car and drove down the hill to save my girlfriend and kill their god. At the bottom of the cliff, I got out of the car. I faced the forest, and it seemed to beg me not to enter. The tops of the trees blocked out any moonlight. The only path I saw forward was revealed to me by the oval glow of my phone's flashlight. Everything on the outskirts might as well have been invisible. I wrapped my belt across my hand until the belt was tight and the buckle was on my knuckle, and I put my keys between my fingers on the other hand like Wolverine and walked on. It was an odd, dead feeling that night. No bugs squirmed around me, no squirrels scurried, no birds squawked. A god walked on earth. That tends to change things. But to be clear, the forest was not silent, no. There were those who wanted to be close to our God, and this would be their chance. However, like Moses on the mountain, there is a cost to seeing the face of every god. There were at least 20 or so, maybe 39, our God's holy number. Men and women who grazed in the woods on all four like cattle. They wore the finest watches and necklaces and suits or dresses tailored to their Greek statuesque bodies. Muscular men and thin women with full heads of long hair and previously white teeth stained with dirt. They were so happy. I went deeper into the forest. The wind spoke. It sang praises to our God, and the rest of the world muted in reply. I went even deeper into the forest. The trees changed. They smelled like steak and turned into fresh slabs of brown meat with pinkish undertones. Flies flew around them. And still I went deeper into the forest. Above me, the leaves had transformed to $100 bills and rained down to the floor. This didn't even excite me. I only think about money 95% of the time, but I wanted her. I wanted to hold her hand and whisk her out of there. I opened my mouth to yell her name, and all I heard was the wind praising the name of our God. Frustrated, I paused and shone my light to my right and left. To my left, there were 3 dead bodies stacked on top of one another. Further to the left stood a man with money in each hand and a pile of money behind him. He crouched in front of his money, and his lips crawled into an evil curve. Blood dripped from his hands. "No, no," I yelled and waved my hands at him to signal I did not want his money. I did not care about his money. I was not like the others he killed. The chilling and worshipping wind blocked the words from reaching his ears. He charged at me. His fist whipped across my face. I leaned back to avoid contact. I kicked his chest and forced him back. They did not drop the money. "Stop!" The scream was useless and sad. The wind song of our God's goddess was the only thing that could be heard. His arms flailed in random and unorthodox strikes. Right, left, right, right, right. He was a fighter. The 3 dead bodies were evidence of that. But he was also tired. Again, 3 dead bodies. With a handful of keys, I scratched across his face. A warning. I raised my hands to surrender. I didn't want to fight anyone else. He boomed forward. Like I said earlier, he was a tired fighter, too tired to dodge. My hand of keys went straight into his neck. He howled and paused. I used that time to get behind him and wrap my belt around his neck. Again, I strangled another one of his followers. His body dropped to the floor and he did not stir. The wind died. I could hear myself breathe. It was harsh and heavy, barbaric. Someone ran behind me. I turned around and saw the love of my life. "Yay!" Kay said and smiled in her goofy way, a big and awkward smile that always reached her eyes. Her 2 front teeth reminded me of a happy rabbit. She started stuttering like she always does when she's too nervous or excited. I knew it was you, and I was worried that you might get hurt, so I ran here to save you. I was going to..." She throws the worst punch-kick combo I'd ever seen in my life. Something like that, probably. I'm glad I wasn't relying on that, I joked. She rushed over and hugged me, and it felt like home. "Let's grab the money and go." She ignores me and snuggles further into my chest. "No," I scolded. "I'm serious, we need to go." She says something I can't hear into my chest. "What?" I ask. I'm not going. I'm going elsewhere." I pull her off of me and look into her eyes. Okay. Where are we going then?" "Seth, you can't come. He said you can't come. I'm going with him." No, you don't have to do that. Look, I have a plan where we can get out of here, and I'll do drop shipping, and if that doesn't work, I can sell drugs. I'll do anything. I don't want to live like that," she said. "I want to do more for the world than drop ship or sell drugs." I sensed myself losing her, an invisible wall coming up between us, and I got desperate. "A kid died," I scolded. "A kid died because of your God. The one you're going to be with, he was burned. Kids die every day. At least he saves kids sometimes. He gives us the option to actually make real change in the world. How many people has he healed? How many people has he raised from the dead? But all of this? Look at all of this. I pointed back to the woods, to the weirdness, the abominations. What? People loving money and killing for it? People willing to be pigs for a chance to have pearls? All of that happens without him. Well, I don't mean to sound harsh, but he's offering world-changing knowledge. I'm going to explore other worlds with him and help people and learn. I can't stay here and waste my life with you. I was speechless. I love you, she said, and I wasn't sure if that was true anymore. At least not in the way I wanted. But I love other people too, and I want to help them. He's allowing me to do that. But please don't leave me. She just smiled. A tear did flow down her cheek, but I knew what was going to happen. It was over. And I had to treat her like everyone else that hated me, hurt me, and rejected me. I couldn't show her that I wanted to cry. Instead, I stared into her eyes and tried to remember them because I doubted I could see them again. I couldn't let her know it felt like my heart was tearing. So I stood tall and focused on deep breaths. I couldn't let her know my head swam at the thought of losing her, so I nodded once to acknowledge I understood her. Then once she left to go into the woods, I got on my knees and begged for my community's God to forgive me. I was ready for my demise now. I was ready to go into the light. He did not answer.